The quiet arrival, the vastness of space, had never felt so cold. Captain Marcus Reed stood on the bridge of the Aurora, humanity's first diplomatic vessel, watching the massive structure ahead grow larger on the view screen. The Galactic Assembly. Station hung in the darkness like a jewel, its spiraling arms stretching outward for hundreds of kilometers. Lights flickered across its surface, representing the homes and offices of thousands of beings from across the galaxy. Marcus was 52 years old, a veteran of Earth's unified space program. He had spent 30 years preparing for this moment, studying alien cultures through intercepted transmissions, learning what little humanity knew about the species that inhabited the stars beyond Earth. His gray hair was cut military short, and his dark eyes held a calm that his crew found reassuring. They needed that calm now, as they approached the unknown. "Captain, we're receiving a docking vector," Lieutenant Sarah Chun announced from the communications station. Her hands moved across the console with practiced efficiency. "Bay 17, outer ring. They're directing us away from the central hub." Marcus nodded slowly. Even before they arrived, the message was clear. Humanity would be kept at the periphery, away from the important areas where established species conducted their business. It was a subtle insult, one he chose not to acknowledge aloud. "Take us in, helm, nice and steady. Let them see we know how to fly." The Aurora glided through the designated approach corridor, passing massive vessels that dwarfed her modest size. Some were elegant and streamlined, others looked like floating cities, and a few seemed to defy the basic laws of physics with their impossible geometries. Humanity's ship, with its clean lines and functional design, looked almost primitive by comparison. That was intentional. The docking procedure took 20 minutes. When the airlock finally sealed and the pressure equalized, Marcus straightened his uniform and turned to his senior staff. Commander David Park, his executive officer, stood ready, with a datapad containing all their diplomatic protocols. Dr. Lisa Nakamura, the xenobiologist, checked her translation device one last time. And Ambassador James Okonkwo, Earth's chosen representative, took a deep breath and nodded. "Remember," Marcus said quietly, "we're here to listen and learn. Whatever happens in that council chamber, we maintain our composure. We show them that humans can be patient and respectful." "Even if they're not?" Park asked with a slight smile. "Especially if they're not." The airlock opened, and they stepped into a world unlike anything most of them had ever seen. The station's interior was breathtaking, with corridors that seemed to bend light itself. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing information in dozens of languages. And the beings walking past them represented a diversity that Earth's wildest science fiction had never imagined. A creature that resembled a floating collection of crystalline shards drifted by, humming with a sound like distant wind chimes. A massive being with 6 legs and fur that rippled with bioluminescent patterns lumbered past, barely glancing at the humans. 2 bipedal aliens with skin like polished copper were engaged in conversation, their voices creating harmonies that the translation device struggled to interpret. Their escort arrived within minutes. He was tall and imposing, standing nearly 8 feet in height. His skin had a faint bluish tint, and his eyes were large and golden, with vertical pupils that contracted as he examined the human delegation. He wore robes that seemed to shift colors with his movements, and he carried himself with an authority that suggested high rank. "I am Ambassador Kellereth of the Vorian Empire," he said, his voice deep and resonant. The translation device rendered his words in perfect English. "I will escort you to the council chamber. The Assembly has agreed to hear your petition for membership." "We're honored," Ambassador Okonkwo replied, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Kellereth looked at the offered hand for a long moment before touching it briefly with 2 fingers. The gesture felt dismissive, as if he were touching something vaguely distasteful. They walked through the station's corridors, and Marcus noticed how other beings reacted to their presence. Some showed curiosity, others indifference, but many displayed what could only be described as amusement. A few made sounds that the translation device interpreted as laughter. The humans were a novelty, an oddity from a distant corner of the galaxy that had only recently learned to leave their own star system. The council chamber was enormous, a circular room with tiered seating that rose toward a domed ceiling, displaying a real-time view of the surrounding space. Representatives from 7 major species occupied the primary seats, each positioned behind elaborate consoles that connected them to vast information networks. Lesser species sat in the outer wings, observers rather than decision-makers. Vorians occupied the central position, clearly the dominant force in the assembly. To their right sat the Kryn, insectoid beings whose chitinous bodies reflected the chamber's light in rainbow patterns. The Talari, beings of pure energy contained within crystalline bodies, pulsed with soft blue light on the left. Other species filled the remaining primary seats, each representing civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. Kulrith gestured for the humans to stand in the center of the chamber, in a depression that placed them lower than all the other representatives. Another subtle message about their status. Marcus kept his expression neutral as he took his position beside Ambassador Okonkwo. "The Assembly recognizes the delegation from Earth," Kulrith announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You have traveled far to stand before us. Speak your petition." Asterisk Okonkwo stepped forward, his voice clear and confident. "Honored members of the Galactic Assembly, we come before you as representatives of humanity. Our species has recently developed faster than light travel and seeks to join the community of spacefaring civilizations. We offer our knowledge, our labor, and our friendship. We hope to learn from you and to contribute what we can to the greater galactic society." The words were carefully chosen, diplomatic and humble. They had been refined through months of preparation. But as Okonkwo finished speaking, Marcus saw the expressions on the faces of the assembled aliens. They were not impressed. A Kryn representative leaned forward, its mandibles clicking together. "Humanity has existed as a technological species for barely 2 centuries. You achieved spaceflight only 150 years ago. You developed faster-than-light capability merely 5 years past. By what measure do you believe yourselves? Ready to join this assembly?" Okonkwo began to respond, but another voice cut him off. This came from a reptilian being with scales that seemed to absorb light. "Your species still engages in warfare among yourselves. Your planet is divided into competing factions. You pollute your own environment and struggle with basic resource management. You are children playing with dangerous toys. We acknowledge our challenges," Okonkwo said carefully, "but we have made significant progress. Global conflicts have decreased dramatically. We have united under a world government specifically to present a unified front to the galaxy. We are learning and growing." Kulrith raised one hand, and silence fell across the chamber. The Assembly appreciates humanity's enthusiasm. However, membership in this body requires more than enthusiasm. It requires proven stability, technological sophistication, and a demonstrated commitment to galactic peace. "We are committed to peace," Okonkwo insisted. "Are you?" A Talari representative's voice chimed like bells. "Your history is written in blood. Thousands of wars across your brief existence. Even now, your ships carry weapons. Your colonies are fortified. You speak of peace while preparing for war." Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he remained silent. This was Okonkwo's role, not his. "We carry weapons because the universe is unknown to us," Okonkwo explained. "We prepare defenses because we do not know what dangers might exist. This is prudence, not aggression. It is paranoia," the reptilian being said flatly. "The Assembly maintains peace through cooperation and mutual understanding." There is no need for every species to bristle with weapons like frightened animals. Asterisk, the debate continued for another hour. Every argument the humans presented was countered, every achievement dismissed as insufficient. It became clear that the assembly had made its decision before the humans ever entered the chamber. This hearing was a formality, perhaps even a form of entertainment for the established species. Finally, Kelrith stood, and the chamber fell silent. The assembly has reached its conclusion. Humanity is denied membership at this time. Furthermore, human expansion beyond your current 3-star systems is forbidden. You will confine your activities to your home system and the colonies you have already established. Any expansion beyond these boundaries will be considered a violation of galactic law and will be met with appropriate enforcement. The words fell like hammer blows. Marcus saw Okonkwo's shoulders sag slightly, saw Dr. Nakamura close her eyes in disappointment. Park's hand curled into a fist at his side. They had traveled 15 light years for this humiliation. You cannot imprison an entire species, Okonkwo said, his voice strained. We have the right to explore and settle as we see fit. You have the rights we grant you, Kelrith replied coldly. Be grateful. We are allowing you to keep the colonies you have. The assembly could have demanded your complete withdrawal to Earth. Consider this restriction a mercy, and use the time wisely. Perhaps in a few centuries, you will have matured sufficiently to reconsider your application. The dismissal was clear. The human delegation was escorted from the chamber in silence. As they walked back through the station's corridors, Marcus noticed the looks from passing aliens had changed. Where before there had been curiosity and amusement, now there was something closer to pity. Back aboard the Aurora, the mood was somber. The crew had watched the proceedings through live feed. They had heard every insult, every dismissal. As Marcus returned to the bridge, he saw the frustration and anger on their faces. Captain, Chun said quietly, they had no intention of accepting us. No, Marcus agreed. They didn't. So what do we do now? Park asked. Do we just accept these restrictions? Let them dictate where we can and cannot go? Marcus moved to his command chair and sat down slowly. He looked out at the massive assembly station on the view screen, at the powerful ships coming and going, at the civilization that had just rejected humanity's place among the stars. Then he smiled, just slightly. Helm, set course for Earth. Best speed. Yes, sir. As the Aurora began moving away from the station, Marcus activated his personal console and entered a coded message. The encryption was military grade, unbreakable by anyone without the proper authorization. The message was brief, just 3 words. But those 3 words would change everything. Execute protocol revelation. Light years away, in the outer reaches of human-controlled space, systems that had been dormant for years began coming online. Hidden facilities powered up, encrypted networks activated, and orders were transmitted to locations that the Galactic Assembly did not know existed. On the Aurora's bridge, Commander Park leaned close to Marcus. Sir, was that? Yes, Marcus said quietly. We gave them a chance for peace. They chose arrogance. Now they'll learn what humanity really is. 3 days later, as the Aurora was still making its way back toward Earth, alarms began sounding on Dominion patrol vessels stationed near the outer boundaries of the restricted human zone. Sensors were detecting something impossible. Energy signatures that should not exist, appearing and disappearing like ghosts across dozens of star systems. A Vorian scout captain studied his tactical display with growing confusion. What am I looking at? His sensor officer shook his head. Unknown, sir. The signatures don't match anything in our database. They appear for a few seconds, then vanish. It's like something is jumping in and out of normal space. How many contacts? The officer hesitated. Impossible to say, sir. At least 50 separate signatures. But they're not staying visible long enough for accurate counts. The captain felt something he had not experienced in his 20 years of service. Unease. Send a priority report to Fleet Command. Something is happening in human space, and we need to know what it is. But by the time the report reached the assembly, it was already too late. The pieces were in motion. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades, building in secret, planning in shadow, waiting for the day when the galaxy would underestimate them. That day had arrived. And soon, the Galactic Assembly would discover that humanity's quiet arrival had been merely the calm before the storm. Asterisk. The awakening 3 months had passed since humanity's rejection at the Galactic Assembly. To the casual observer, Earth and its limited colonies had accepted their fate. Trade continued within the permitted boundaries. Human ships stayed within their designated 3 star systems. There were no protests, no angry declarations, no desperate attempts to negotiate. Just quiet compliance. The Dominion considered the matter closed. Humanity had learned its place. The young species would mature within its cage, and perhaps in a few centuries, they might be ready to join civilized galactic society. Until then, they were a minor concern, barely worth monitoring. War Master Theron of the Vorian Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unbreakable Will, studying the tactical display with satisfaction. His fleet of 50 warships had just entered the Kepler 442 system, where humans had established a colony in direct violation of the Assembly's restrictions. The colony, called New Haven, housed approximately 50,000 settlers on the system's 4th planet. Theron was a career military officer, and his record was impeccable. 200 years of service, countless campaigns against pirates and rogue factions, and an unwavering loyalty to the Dominion. He had fought in the Outer Rim Wars and helped pacify 3 rebellious species. Dealing with upstart humans would be simple by comparison. "All ships report ready, War Master," his tactical officer announced. "The colony's defenses are minimal. 6 orbital platforms with primitive kinetic weapons. 3 patrol vessels, destroyer class. They pose no threat." Theron nodded. The humans had not even tried to defend this world properly. Either they were foolish or they genuinely believed the Dominion would not enforce its restrictions. Either way, they were about to learn a harsh lesson. "Open a channel to the colony," he ordered. On the view screen, a human face appeared. She was a woman in her 40s, with dark skin and intelligent eyes that showed no fear despite the overwhelming force surrounding her world. She wore a simple administrative uniform, and her expression was calm. "I am Governor Maria Santos of New Haven Colony," she said. "Welcome to our system, War Master Theron. I assume this is not a diplomatic visit." Theron appreciated the directness. "Governor Santos, your colony exists in violation of Galactic Assembly decree. You have 6 hours to evacuate all personnel and dismantle your installations. Any individuals remaining after that deadline will be forcibly removed. Your ships will be confiscated, and your structures will be destroyed." Santos tilted her head slightly. 6 hours is insufficient time to evacuate 50,000 people, War Master. Surely you understand basic logistics. "I understand that your species chose to violate clear restrictions," Theron replied coldly. "The timeline is generous considering your offense. I suggest you begin immediately. And if we refuse?" Theron's eyes narrowed. "Then you will learn why the Dominion has maintained peace for 10,000 years. Force, Governor. Overwhelming and absolute. Do not test my patience." Santos was quiet for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled, and something about that smile made Theron's skin prickle. "War Master, I need to tell you something important. You've made a terrible mistake coming here. Is that a threat?" Theron asked, incredulous. "You have 3 patrol ships and 6 orbital platforms. My fleet could reduce your colony to rubble in minutes. On what basis do you threaten me? I'm not threatening you, Santos said softly. I'm warning you. You see, New Haven isn't defenseless. We're just the bait. Before Theron could respond, every alarm on his ship began screaming simultaneously. His tactical officer stared at his console in disbelief, his hands hovering over controls that suddenly made no sense. War Master, contacts. Multiple contacts appearing on all vectors. How many? Theron demanded. I can't. They're still appearing, sir. 50, 100, 200. They're everywhere. Theron spun toward the main view screen and felt his breath catch. The space around his fleet was filling with human warships. They appeared like phantoms, their stealth systems deactivating to reveal vessels that had been hiding in plain sight. But these were not the small, primitive ships the Dominion had catalogued. These were monsters. Asterisk massive dreadnoughts, easily twice the size of his flagship, moved into position with mechanical precision. Carriers that dwarfed anything in the Vorian Navy began launching fighter craft by the thousands. Destroyers, cruisers, and vessels whose classifications Theron could not even identify formed a sphere around his fleet. Within seconds, his 50 ships were completely surrounded by what his sensors were now counting as over 3,000 human warships. This is impossible, Theron whispered. Where did they come from? Governor Santos's face was still on the screen, her smile now wider. Would you like me to answer that, or shall I let Admiral Wells explain? The view screen split, and a new face appeared. This was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, and eyes that held the weight of decades of military service. She wore a dark uniform marked with insignia that Theron's database could not identify. And she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had already won. War Master Theron, she said, her voice crisp and professional. I am Admiral Catherine Wells of the Earth Defense Forces. You are currently surrounded by the 3rd, 5th, and 7th fleets of our Navy. Your vessels are outgunned, outnumbered, and outmaneuvered. I am offering you one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. Theron found his voice, though it took effort. You cannot have built this fleet. Our intelligence showed humanity with fewer than 100 ships total. This is double quotes, impossible. Wells finished for him. No, War Master. Just hidden. You see, humanity has been preparing for first contact since before we even left our solar system. We knew that when we reached the stars, we might encounter hostile civilizations. So we prepared. For 3 months, you showed us nothing, Theron said, his tactical mind trying to process the situation. After the Assembly's decision, you remained quiet. You accepted the restrictions. We waited, Wells corrected. There's a difference. We gave you time to reveal your true intentions. And you did. You came to destroy a peaceful colony, to remove humans from a world we had every right to settle. You proved that the Dominion respects only force. So now we're showing you what force really looks like. Theron looked at his tactical display again. The human formations were perfect, their weapons locked onto his ships, with targeting solutions that would allow no escape. His own fleet, which had seemed so powerful minutes ago, was now trapped like fish in a net. How long? He asked quietly. How long have you been building this fleet? 73 years, Wells replied. Since 2152, when we first detected your transmissions and realized we weren't alone in the universe. Every nation on Earth contributed. We built shipyards in the asteroid belt, on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, in the vast emptiness beyond Neptune. We developed stealth technology that made our vessels invisible to your sensors. And we waited, hoping we would never need to use them. She leaned forward slightly. You could have been our friends, War Master. You could have welcomed us into the galactic community. Instead, you chose arrogance and threats. Now you face the consequences. Theron's tactical officer spoke urgently. War Master, their weapons are charging. Energy signatures are off the scale. If they fire, I know what will happen if they fire, Theron snapped. He turned back to the view screen, meeting Wells's steady gaze. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to fight, to show these upstart humans that the Vorian Empire did not surrender. But his tactical training was stronger than his pride. This was not a battle he could win. What are your terms? He asked, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. Simple, Wells replied. You will withdraw your fleet immediately. You will return to the Galactic Assembly and inform them that humanity will no longer accept restrictions on our expansion. We will settle where we choose, trade with whom we choose, and live as a free species. If the Dominion wishes to coexist peacefully, we welcome that. But if you choose conflict, you will lose. The Assembly will never accept these terms, Theron said. They will send more fleets, larger forces. Wells smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Let them. War Master, what you're seeing here is 3 of our fleets. We have 12 more in reserve, plus static defense platforms around every human world. We have weapons your scientists haven't dreamed of and strategies refined through centuries of human warfare. We've studied your tactics, your weaknesses, your entire military doctrine. You know nothing about us except what we've chosen to show you. She paused, letting her words sink in. Tell the Assembly this. Humanity is not asking for permission anymore. We're here. We're expanding. And if they want to stop us, they're welcome to try. But it will cost them everything. Theron stared at the tactical display, at the impossible number of human ships surrounding his fleet. 73 years of secret construction. Decades of planning and preparation. This was not the work of a primitive species stumbling into the galaxy. This was the work of a civilization that understood exactly how dangerous the universe could be. All ships, he said finally, his voice heavy. Prepare to withdraw. Set course for the assembly station, maximum speed. A wise choice, Wells said. Oh, and War Master? When you report this to the assembly, make sure you tell them everything. Don't downplay our numbers or capabilities. It's important that they understand exactly what they're facing. The channel closed. Theron watched as the human fleet parted, creating a corridor for his ships to retreat through. The humiliation was complete. He had come to enforce the Dominion's will, and had been sent home like a scolded child Dot as his flagship began accelerating away from Kepler 442. Theron activated a priority transmission to the Assembly. This news could not wait. The galaxy needed to know that everything had changed. On New Haven, Governor Santos stood on the observation deck of the colony's Central Administration Building, watching the Vorian fleet depart. Admiral Wells appeared beside her, having transported down from her flagship. Do you think they'll listen? Santos asked. No, Wells said simply. Pride and arrogance don't disappear overnight. The Dominion has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They won't surrender that power based on one encounter. They'll debate, argue, and eventually they'll try to respond with force. And when they do? Wells looked up at the stars, at the vast expanse where 3,000 human warships maintained their positions, ready for whatever came next. Then we'll show them that humanity doesn't bluff. We prepared for the worst-case scenario, Sanctus. We hoped for peace, but we built for war. If the Dominion forces our hand, they'll discover just how dangerous a species becomes when it's spent its entire existence learning to survive. Light years away, in the Galactic Assembly chamber, emergency sessions were being called. Delegates from all 7 primary species gathered in shock and confusion as Theron's report came through. The impossible had happened. A species they had dismissed as primitive had revealed military capabilities that rivaled or exceeded their own. Ambassador Kelrith watched the tactical recordings from the Kepler 442 incident, his golden eyes wide with disbelief. 3,000 ships, advanced stealth technology, weapons that outranged Dominion armaments, and the humans claimed to have 12 more fleets in reserve. This changes everything, the Kryn representative clicked nervously. If their claims are accurate, they possess the largest military force in the galaxy. How did we miss this? The Talare chimed. 73 years of construction, and we detected nothing? Kelrith said nothing. He simply watched the recordings loop again, seeing the human fleet appear like an avenging angel around Theron's forces. The Dominion had underestimated humanity. They had seen a young species and assumed weakness. They had observed primitive technology and assumed inferiority. They had been catastrophically wrong. Prepare a formal response, Kelrith said finally. We need to reevaluate our position on humanity. And we need to do it quickly, before this situation escalates beyond control. But even as he spoke, Kelrith knew the truth. The galaxy had changed in 3 short months. Humanity had revealed itself not as a supplicant, begging for acceptance, but as a power that demanded respect. The quiet arrival had ended. The awakening had begun, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. Asterisk.